Welcome to the Writer's Room for Run Radio. I'm Trina Wilcox. Jeff Berney is my guest today. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Yeah, so you've got some writing that you've been doing based on a bunch of characters that have been building in your head for a very long time. And I appreciate that about fiction writers because I think it's difficult to keep track of characteristics and all the things that you got to do when putting a plot and a plan together for a great story. So, how do you manage that?
Oh, well, I mean, the good thing is my characters don't leave me alone, so they're very persistent. Um, but also, I'm a big proponent of outlining, and particularly, I like to do character sheets. So, kind of a little background on each character, and I go beyond, what do they look like, and sound like, and um, I try to get to like what are their internal conflicts and external conflicts, and how might they change during the story. Um, what role they will play, even if they're a somewhat minor character. I want everyone to have a role in the story. Otherwise, they're just kind of background. And then as I'm writing, they kind of take off on their own. I give myself room to um, let the characters roam and do what they want to a point. Sometimes I have to reel them in, but
Right. So do you like have specific sections of notebooks or maybe you use it online? How do you do that? And like, do you do everything from birth dates to where the character was born? What's that like?
yeah, I don't get necessarily too bogged down in like the birth dates or where they were born, unless I think it'll be like an important
Sure.
piece of the story. And everything's online. I love collecting cool looking notebooks, but my handwriting is awful. It's been atrocious since I was a kid, but now that everything's digital these days and I'm
Right.
typing more than writing, I can't read it. uh, so it's got to be online for me.
Okay. So when did you know that you were ready to put a book together?
Oh man, my first goal was to have written a novel by the time I was 40.
Okay.
um, and I think I was 38 at the time, and I thought, I've wanted to do this for a while. I'm just going to sit down and do it. I did write that book. It was really bad, but I felt like, okay, I hit that goal, and I learned a lot. So after a bit of a break, so that I could refresh my wounded heart and ego,
Oh,
I I got back to it. And my second book was way better. I had I brought things that I learned from the first one, and I think my so that was my first published book, and then my second published book I think is my best one yet. And I think it just takes a while as a writer to find your unique voice. And I think
mhm.
that after writing 390 plus thousand word novels, that I'm starting to get there.
Good. I know we're our worst critics, but I am glad that you shared that because I think a lot of times people think that you just, push out the story and it's a success and everybody loves it because it's done, and it just doesn't happen that way. It's a learning
No,
process.
absolutely. Yeah. Writing a novel, I think is, it's like a marathon. And I think if you've never done one, it can feel daunting. And that's kind of why I use more of an outline process, because I breaking it down into acts, and then into chapters, and then even into scenes kind of helps me. Okay, I'm only writing this little piece right now, so I don't have to, my mind doesn't have to wander to, oh, I'm only 1,000 words into 90,000.
Right. It's like your training plan.
Absolutely.
I get the marathon correlation for sure. So that speaks to me. Um, what was it like to start the publishing process?
It's been a fun journey. I've got a kind of I've got a marketing background. And so I set out wanting to be an independent or self-published author. I didn't
Cool.
query my book anywhere. it was something that I wanted to do. And maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm a control freak, but I also think that it's the business part of being an author is super interesting to me. So I wanted to learn everything, not just writing the book, but how do I get it edited? How do I get it formatted? Um, Even decisions on, do I do print? Do I do audio? Where do I publish? So I've, done a lot of research. Sometimes I listen to the experts, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'm sorry I didn't. Sometimes I'm sorry I did. But it's a learning curve, and I'm just having fun, experimenting. And this, luckily, I'm at a point where I have a good career. Um, my author career is kind of my retirement plan. I figure, I'm going to write as many books as I can before I retire. And then when I retire, I will just, um, I will be able to write all the time like I want to now. And I'll, kind of be set up. I already have books. I'll have a back catalog. And so I'm thinking of it kind of long term.
That was a question I did want to ask you, was if your author career was a side career as well as something else that, is the bread and butter.
Yes, definitely side career. And I think, even traditionally published authors a lot of times have to have an actual career. So I don't it I think being able to pay my bills and not have to worry about that is helps me be a little bit more free creatively too.
I like that. I feel like more people need to hear that. More creatives need to hear that kind of thing. And it's a good statement to remind people of. I also like that, you were excited about being self-published from the beginning. And I've also heard a lot of people do have different things that they know they need help on. Like someone will hire an editor, or there are a lot of different ways to do it. It doesn't all have to fall on one person. And can you kind of talk about that so people can kind of understand that it's not
Yeah.
all on their shoulders?
Yeah, that's true. I do know a lot of first time authors who, are trying to design their book cover, or, don't have money for an editor, so just don't do editing. And it could be tough. I mean, it's definitely a bootstrap kind of way to publish, but that doesn't mean that we can't and shouldn't also try to be as make our product, our book, as professional as it can be. If we're being honest, there's a lot of self-published books out there that probably should be pulled and edited, and have the covers redone. And I don't blame any of those authors for wanting their stories to be out there, but it is hard to make a dent when there's a bunch of errors, or the cover just doesn't grab people. And so, not being afraid to find extra help if you're not a designer, and I am not a designer. There's all kinds of options for your cover, whether it's um, finding a pre-made cover that you can get for cheap. If you've got a friend who actually is a designer, there's places where authors who have different skills trade, or someone is a good editor and someone else actually is a designer. You can trade those skills too. So it doesn't have to be a super expensive thing, but making sure, like, even if you can't afford an editor, if you've got 5 to 10 people who are close to you who can read through it and at least find the big errors, if you can use Grammarly or something like that as well after those beta readers, that'll get you, I think 80 to 90% there as well.
Besides finding some close people to help with that process, where else would you recommend reaching out to people that might be interested in trade?
Yeah, I've found a lot of fellow authors on social media. I'm on Instagram and TikTok. There's a huge, author community on both of those. I know there's a huge community on Facebook. I just, um, as someone who writing isn't my only career, I don't have a whole lot of time for um, getting into the excuse me, the all of the social media channels. So I had to, pick and choose. But yeah, I mean, if you even do an online search for author communities, you'll find all kinds of groups online, and that's what's so great about the indie author community is everybody wants to help each other. It's not necessarily I think most of us don't view other authors as competition. We want to help our fellow indie authors put out more professional books, because the more professional books that are indie produced, the less stigma there will be on self-publishing. And so I think, it's just a very open and friendly community.
Yes, I would agree. So you said you didn't have much time to spend on social media, and yeah, you got quite a house full. And I'm looking that behind you might be the way, if you're watching the video, that you cope with this. How do you find time to make it all go?
Um, I I don't, but that's something that I've learned. That's something I've learned is, sometimes you just don't have the time. When I first started writing, the main advice I think that I heard, and I think it's still relevant and still out there, is you need to write every day. And I love that advice, but sometimes it doesn't fit your life. And I think it's okay to understand that. So I can't write every day. I've got, as you mentioned, we've got 7 kids. Only 4 of them are still at home, but those 4, 3 of them are teenagers and one's
Oh my
6 year
God.
old. So it's a crazy house. When I do write, it's, on my lunch hour or after everybody's asleep. So it's just finding those little pieces. And I think that's also what drew me to being more of an outliner and a plotter, because I can go away for a couple of days if I have to and come back and like, oh, this is where I was. Where I
Yeah.
think if I was just trying to write as I go, I
Yeah.
think I would forget, okay, where was I? And I don't
Well,
think it would work.
and you've decided to, your words, write stories that keep people up at night. So, what drew you to that genre?
I'm really not sure that's what came out, and maybe that says something scary about me. The first book that I actually started outlining was a kid's book. I still haven't written that. I have all the notes, and I still think it's a cool idea. But as I sat down to write, um, and come up with the story and plan everything, it was this serial killer psychological thriller that kind of came out, and the characters are crazy. My second book is even filled with stranger, more deranged characters. It's funny because my wife is my first reader, and my parents are my second and third readers, and my mom has decided she loves me, but she's not going to read my books anymore, uh, because I think she feels like maybe guilty. Like what did I do that this is what you write?
Transpired.
But I grew up reading um, classic Stephen King, but I also really loved more literary authors. John Irving is probably my favorite author. Super amazing, Cider House Rules, The World According to Garth, um, A Prayer for Owen Meany. So like these very dense literary novels that he writes, but if you've read them, like his characters are really super strange, and I think maybe that just subconsciously rubbed off on me, and that's what comes out.
Hey, you turned it into something great. You've got 2 novels out right now, and are we going to be able to expect a third?
Oh, well, I hope you expect a third and a fourth and
Great.
a 30th.
Great.
Um,
Tell me about the first 2.
yes. So my first one, like I said, psychological thriller. It's called A Killer Secret. And the thing that I start out with is I try to have a theme or a question that kind of guides my writing. And for A Killer Secret, the question was, everybody has everybody has secrets. There are things that you don't want the world or even your close friends to know. What if one of those secrets was worth killing to keep? And so that's kind of what drove the idea for the story. And the story is very kind of intimate. There's only three main characters, and they're mostly the only characters in the book. And it's about a female psychologist, and she's kind of not sure of her place in the world. She's not sure if she's helping anybody. She's in a bad relationship with her older business partner, mentor, um, who used to be her college professor. He's not a cool guy at all. And then one day she gets a new patient, and uh, he eventually tells her that he is a serial killer, and that's where all the action kind of jumps off from there, and you realize that all three of these characters have these deep secrets, and they kind of slowly unravel as their lives intertwine. And so that's a killer secret.
Okay.
And then the Fall of Faith it's more of a domestic thriller, um maybe even, I hate to say, like romantic suspense. There's romance in there, but it's not, I mean, it's not a healthy romance. um in fact, the main story revolves around Jimmy. He's a longtime trucker, has really his whole life has been seeing the world go by through his windshield. He's divorced. He's on his last run, on his way home, and realizes he really has nothing to go home to. And he ends up getting stuck in a small town named Eden, which, despite its biblical namesake, is more of a hell on earth. He discovers it's this town again. I guess I'm fascinated with secrets. It's this town full of secrets and all of these crazy characters who each have their own um, reason for being deceptive. And he falls in love. Maybe it's falls in lust with a woman that he shouldn't, and she kind of as the relationship grows, the danger starts, and it's not clear whether or not Jimmy's even going to make it out of Eden alive. So I
Okay.
don't do Hollywood endings. I don't mind killing characters. I try to be surprising. And I'm the kind of person who, when I read a book, I'm always, even if I try not to, I'm always thinking, oh, this is what's going to happen next. Oh, this person's going to do that. And so when I write, I know that I know the twist, but I try to write them in a way that people like me won't get it. So
Okay. 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 So where can people that love that genre and are ready to read these stories, where can they get your books?
you can buy them directly from me at jeffberney.com. You can buy the ebook, paperback, and hardcover from me. But there's also links on my website. The books are available on all the major online retailers: Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Apple, Google Play, Kobo, and then a bunch of smaller ones as well.
All right. Now, do you also have the audiobooks made yet?
No, I am working on
Okay.
that. That is like, if you keep up on, how people are reading and industry statistics. I mean, audiobooks are definitely outpacing every form. I think right now, unfortunately, for self-published authors, they're still fairly expensive, and it's based on finished hours. So the longer your book, the more expensive it is. And my books are fairly long, so I can't. They're not necessarily in the budget. I've thought about recording them myself, which, again, as an indie, I like to try to learn things,
Yes.
and I've realized that the recording part is fun, the editing part is not.
Thank you.
Uh,
That's where I'm at.
yeah, and so I'm trying to learn the editing part, so hopefully it becomes faster. So
Yes.
they're still in the works. Every 6 months or so, I think, okay, I'll just bite the bullet and get a narrator, and then I look at the cost again, and I'm like, okay, I won't. But there are options. You can do with narrators, you can do profit sharing and things like that. So I mean, there are options. It's just still, it's for me, it's like kind of that last frontier for indie publishing. It's not quite within the realm of easy to do yet.
Not super easy. And as a narrator, there are ways to work on, like you said, royalties only, which is how I've done it through ACX, which is affiliated with Audible, Amazon Publishing. So for authors that are thinking about that, that is an option. And you, as the writer, get to hear some auditions and get to pick the voice that you feel like does well. You can also set up your accounts where you, like you were saying, I feel like with the dark side of where your stories might lend in your voice, that might be a good way for you to do it too. If like you said, if you could get through that editing part, it is such a bear. So I get it.
Yes.
Best of luck. I had a great time talking with you. I do hope you'll reach back out when that next book is ready to be promoted and we'll talk about it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.